Thank you everybody for joining this presentation on my startup. And thank you, Saad, for arranging this. Very grateful. So I'll jump right into this. This is my startup, Scooty. We quietly started it mid last year. And it was after my experience of riding one of these in Washington, D.C. I'm a daily user of public transit, and I don't know if anybody that enjoys using public transit. I take the GO station. I use GO Transit on a daily basis along with TTC and Mississauga Transit and others. And I wanted to enhance my transit experience, so I tried one of these in Washington, and I said, why can't we do this in Ontario? So I'm just going to jump right in. We're a clean tech e-scooter company. The whole intention here is to make short distance travel fast, efficient, and fun. Like I said, I don't know if anybody who enjoys their public transit, but once you try this, I think it will change your mind. This is what the scooter is in actual real life. This thing here, this black jelly bean here on the midpoint of the handlebar, that's the GPS unit. Where it says here, no riding on sidewalks in the base, that's where the battery is. These are two 10-inch air-filled tires. And this scooter on a single charge goes for about 60 kilometers. E-scooters can transform the first and last mile urban transport. For those of you who are not familiar with the terminology, first and last mile stands for how do you get from your either place of residence or your place of work to a midpoint in terms of a main transit hub. And once you get to the end of that transit journey, how do you get from that transit station to your final place? So in my case, and I'm going to go to the next slide. I go from my house, which is my first mile, to my main GO station, which is Cooksville GO station, for those of you know in Mississauga. And from Cooksville GO station, my last destination is the DMZ, the Ryerson Digital Media Zone at Yonge and Dundas Square. So I used to either walk from my house to the GO station or take my car or use public transit, depending on how the weather was. You're looking at about a 10 to 15-minute journey through traditional modes of transport. I slashed that to 5 to 7 minutes by riding my e-scooter. So I would take the e-scooter from my house to the GO station, take it on the train with me to Union, and then ride from Union Station to Yonge and Dundas. Union Station to Yonge and Dundas is about 2 kilometers. That would take me around 7 to 10 minutes on my e-scooter. If I would take TTC, you're looking at about 10 to 12 minutes, assuming the TTC or showed up on time, or I was able to get on if it was not crowded. So it's been, and I saved a lot of money in TTC fees because I just started to take my scooter instead. So I saved money on TTC and I saved money on using Mississauga Transit, and I saved time on not taking my car and looking for a parking spot at the GO station. So this was just a case study that we just wanted to test it out, but then we wanted to look for data, and we found data that supported this first and last mile case. 38 million scooter rides in the US were taken to and from public transit. Sorry, the total e-scooter rides in the US in 2018 were 38 million. 40% of that 38 million were to and from public transit. And that to me was a bit of a validator. And 35% of that 38 million displaced car trips. So rides or trips that you would have taken by car, short distance trips, your 5 or 10 kilometers, those were displaced by taking an e-scooter instead. And that's where we came up with the theory that Scooty can bridge public transit and civic needs. This is all data that we have gotten from credible sources such as NACTCO and TechCrunch, and also a pilot project that was done in Calgary. So just to show you guys what the e-scooter rollout has been in Canada. E-scooters were rolled out in Kelowna, in Calgary, in Edmonton. There was a pilot in Waterloo and in Montreal. Montreal, not too long ago, put a ban on e-scooter pilots because of the lack of respect, I guess, that other providers were providing with other providers were managing with the city of Montreal. So they canceled it temporarily. Waterloo did a small pilot on a 6-kilometer trail that was on a private property at the David Johnson Tech Park. And the numbers were incredible, 18,000 trips in total from October to November, and about 19,000 kilometers were taken. You can see the data, Calgary, Edmonton, Kelowna, all quite impressive. The reason why these e-scooters work is because they offer various key advantages to cities. There's a sustainability advantage. There's a multimodal transportation advantage, which I just mentioned. As an example, if I was to take an Uber or a Lyft or a taxi, if I was going for small distances, specifically in downtown areas such as Toronto or even in the suburbs, I now have the option potentially of taking an e-scooter instead. Healthy communities, if there's less cars on the road, there's less congestion, there's less traffic, there's less pollution. I mean, it's a very interesting effect where you have e-scooters which are battery powered and they're replacing car trips. So naturally, it's a great derivative. There's also economic growth. So some of the data that we've been seeing is if there is a restaurant per se that's not readily accessible by car or by public transit, you can just grab an e-scooter and go to this restaurant. And also equity standpoint, there is quite a few, they call it dead zones or low frequency zones in the city, whether it's in Mississauga or Toronto or other cities, where public transit is not readily accessible or available. So supporting public transit through e-scooters is an excellent opportunity from an equity standpoint to provide people a case or even a resource for them to get around. This is again pre-COVID. We'll have to see what the market is going to be post-COVID. But the e-scooter market is expected to go about 200 to 300 billion by 2030. Again, 84 million shared trips and 3+ billion deployed by investors. One of the things that we did initially on is to start engaging government partners. So we are in constant conversations with Premier Ford's office.
Sorry.
Over here, you see.
Hi, sure. Yeah. I've just joined in. I'm sorry. My name is Ahmed. Can we ask questions between the presentation or?
Absolutely, absolutely. Feel free. Feel free. So I was just saying, you know, one of the things we've initially done before, as we were starting this project, was to start engaging municipal and provincial partners. So we've been in constant conversations with Premier Ford's office.
Sorry, I was going to say that can we ask questions during the presentation?
Of course. Yeah, go for it.
So if you can you go to the previous slide, please?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you said 200 to 300 billion dollars. The market is expected to grow by 2030 for e-scooters.
This is pre-COVID. We'll have to figure out what post-COVID is going to look like. This is global. This is global, and I'm happy to share with you resources as to where we got this information from.
Yeah, and there are 84 million shared micromobility trips made in the US in 2018.
Only in the US, yes. So you see e-scooters all over the world, specifically in
I know Europe is big in it, but
it's huge in the States. South America, they have now started to pop up in Dubai, specifically in Abu Dhabi. Saudi Arabia is looking into it.
That's fine, thank you. I was just curious about that figure because it's huge.
It's crazy, right? I don't believe it per se, because who knows if these are inflated numbers, but the use cases and the numbers of adoption has been quite impressive. And I don't know if you had a chance to see the numbers from Canada. I'll quickly show you. Those are the Canadian numbers. Whoops. Those are the Canadian numbers of adoption.
which is not that big, which is not that great, I think.
These are small pilots. They're very small, contained pilots with geofenced areas. So these are not rolled out in the whole city.
Okay.
Very, very small portions at only 1,500 scooters.
Okay.
So it's interesting. And these made it legal as of January 1st, but now the cities have to work on
I know, because I remember seeing these in France, and they were probably going to pass some regulation control sort of thing, and the noise and clutter on the roads. So they're actually passing and trying to come out with laws controlling this.
I'm glad you brought that
forward.
up. I was going to get into it later, but one of the things we've been telling the city and the province is to reduce the speed to about 20 kilometers an hour, and to cap the number of scooters each company is allowed to release.
Okay, that's fine.
And do a gradual tiered approach.
Right.
So in Calgary and Edmonton, it was like Bird, 1,000 scooters, Lime, 1,000 scooters. But when you're releasing a new mode of transport on the roads, people have to understand that we have to share these scooters with people that are in cars and delivery trucks, vans, local transit, buses. So it's a new mode of transport. And if you gradually just dump them in a city, it's going to cause chaos. So Paris is a great example. So now a lot of these major cities are now scaling back as to how many they're allowing each scooter company to release the
Yeah. And that's why I was actually looking at the number $200-300 billion, and I was like a little skeptical on that, but you never know.
Yeah,
okay, that's fine. Thank you so much.
As you can see, so our biggest champion is the gentleman on the far right. That's Minister Praveen Sarkaria. He's the Minister of Small Business and Red Tape Reduction in the Ford government, and because of him, a lot of our doors have opened. So therefore, we're in constant conversations with Minister Ford. Councillor Michael Ford from the City of Toronto, who we met just a little over a month ago, rode our scooter in in council chambers. So that was quite impressive, and he's offered his support for us to grow and develop further. The reason why I bring up the relationship with the government is we will not be able to get regulation approval, if we don't get support from the government. And what we're telling the government is we are a made in Ontario, made in Toronto product. We're a made in company, a startup, a clean tech startup. And they like the story. They like to hear about Canadian stories. And the whole team, which I'll show you very quickly, is all Canadian. To give you a bit of a background of the kind of e-scooters, this is the first wave. They're poorly made. Second is, you see here, unsustainable. So you see a pile of scooters that is dumped. These are your first generation, really crappy models, and unsafe. So this goes to, you know, what the speed limit is, what the size of the tires are, how well built is the scooter, and a whole bunch of other factors. Thankfully, we have identified, based on our research and constant consultation, we have identified 5 different factors that you need to be successful in this business: municipal integration, community benefit, proactive rider safety, economic environment, empowerment, and solution design. And thankfully, Scooty checks all boxes. And this is the feedback that we are getting from all of our government partners. The reason why I think we're receiving a lot of attention is because of this very principle of safety, courtesy, and partnerships. We go to governments and we tell them, look, we want to partner up with you in terms of public transit transportation integration. We want to partner up with you to support local businesses. We want to partner up to see how we can enhance the quality of life by giving people an opportunity. So we go with a non-confrontational discussions approach, and that has actually opened up a lot of doors for us. And the fact that we're also incubator at the Ryerson Digital Media Zone, which is the #1 university incubator in the world, has also given us quite a bit of credibility. The other thing that we've been saying to the governments is, from the start, is the governments need to give us, or we need to work with governments to have designated parking zones. The problem with this model is a lot of the general model is you take a scooter, you drop it wherever you want. And that has created a term called scooter litter. And it's creating a lot of mess and a lot of fights and issues and challenges and lawsuits in different parts of the world. So we saw where the puck was going, and we said to the cities and the government, you got to have designated parking zones, just like how you park your car on the road. Cities like that idea, province like that idea, and now we're going to explore collectively what that's going to look like. To the extent the City of Toronto, because of our recommendations, is now strongly looking into designated parking zones for people to drop off the scooters once they're done using them, instead of dumping it all over the place. And we are going to take credit for that suggestion. I showed this image intentionally because the government, until pre-COVID, has been investing a lot of money in public transit. Where we have been coming to the government and telling them was, we can help provide a complementary form of mobility to all the public transit projects that you're doing. For public transit, either people live from walking distance from public transit, or they drive to a public transit access point, or they live very, very close by, where they can take other forms of public transit. So in my case, I take the Mississauga bus, I get to the GO station, and then from Union Station, I take the TTC. I can replace my personal car driving and the TTC and Mississauga Transit by an e-scooter. Now, I'm one case, but some people may not be able to do that. So here's an opportunity for them to partner up with a company like us to have e-scooters at GO stations, at bus stops, and a whole bunch of other public transit stations. So e-scooters, if done correctly, can support various provincial government initiatives. On the top over here, Ontario Minister pledges $3 million to support Eglinton business amid LRT construction. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, of what this area looks like now. It's at Yonge and Eglinton, and it is a big construction mess. So we were in conversations with the Premier's office to see if we can create a micro bylaw to provide e-scooters just in that area for people to get to grab the e-scooter and go support local businesses, because you can't drive in that area because of the construction that's happening. Again, this goes without saying, a connected region improves opportunities. Potential riders in our case are residents, visitors. One of the things we just recently added was supporting social distance measures. We think that public transit is going to change as to how people access and use public transit. There is conversations in major public transit facilities that they might reduce the number of people that jump on a train or a bus or a TTC streetcar to support public transit, to support social distancing rules. People still need an alternative source to get around. Scooters could be an incredible opportunity to be placed as a complementary support system to public transit. Again, local travelers, commuters, students, professionals, retirees, locations where we would potentially operate as main streets and BIAs. There's going to be a lot of community leadership initiatives. Academic campuses, universities and college campuses are a great venue for people to use e-scooters. And I'm thinking universities like McMaster, Queen's, University
I have
of
a
Toronto.
question here.
Yes.
For the e-scooter thing, are you doing this is your model based on retail sales, or are you gonna partner with the city to provide pre-parked scooties like they have the bikes all
Toronto
over the
Bike
city
Share.
here?
That is the plan. I will show you what our model looks like in a few slides. So hang tight. Again, these are some of our user stories, high school students, college students, managers, people that live in downtown, recent graduates, people that are artists, young professionals. So these are user cases that have already been identified by the City of Toronto and how they're designing the future for various cities in the downtown Toronto region. Now, here's our operating model. Commuter programs. So say if City X wanted to create their own e-scooter service, just like how Toronto Bike Share has their own, we can create commuter programs, fleet mobility solutions for those cities. Tourism programs, Niagara Falls is a great example. Niagara County is another example. Wasaga Beach is another example. We can create e-scooter fleets just for those type of programs and mobility consulting services. Here is an opportunity for us to partner up with builders and developers to help them figure out how people are going to go in and out of their commercial or residential commercial residential properties. And I'll get very soon as to who we're talking to already. On the commuter program, which is just like, renting a zip car or something like that by the minute, this is what we are thinking. 50 cents a minute, $1.30 to unlock the scooter because it's physically locked. An additional is 50 cents a minute. But what we're going to be focusing on, and we would be the first mover in this, is we're going to have a subscription model. So think of it as a very cheap cell phone plan. $30 a month gives you 60 minutes of writing time. $60 a month gives you 90 minutes of writing time. We're testing out the numbers of this, but this is where we think we're going to land. The reason why we do not recommend e-scooters for long distance travel. So you're only going to go. We're suggesting to people that you would use an e-scooter for your 2 to 5 kilometer distance travel. Beyond that, it becomes very expensive, and you're better off taking public transit or some other modes of transport to get to your destination. So far, our growth and traction, we started in 2019. We're working on obtaining a license in 2020, pilot up to 4 sites. We're in close negotiation to deploy in a number of cities, and supporting post-COVID efforts to engage citizens and businesses. And this is where we've already started conversations with the City of Toronto, City of Mississauga, and the province to see how we can help and support. And this is our team. This is myself up there, my co-founder, Shoaib Pasha. We have a policy expert on our team. We have Taras Kulik, who is our JD MBA and CFO. Dr. Bilal Farouk is very interesting. He is the Canada Research Chair in Disruptive Transportation Technologies. So he comes in to add a lot of our technical expertise on the team. Adam Gimbron, who some of you may or may not know, was the former chair of the TTC. He also was a senior executive in the New York public transit system. And now he is working in Saudi Arabia for SAPCO, which is their version of, I guess, Metrolinx and Go Transit, Metrolinx and TTC. Fenton is a most recent consultant from Deloitte, and Miles Kaufman, our research intern. And that is the conclusion of my presentation.
Thank you so much, Shoaib, for a very concise and precise
Thank you.
Presentation of the idea. The forum is now officially open. It's not as if it was not open before, but it's now open for any questions that anybody may have.
Thank you.
So I'm just, please feel free to go ahead and ask any questions.
Yeah, so my first question is, in a country like Canada, isn't this more of a seasonal business? The snow and the winter.
Great question. So we've looked at other cities that are very similar to us, such as Chicago and Washington D.C., to see how they have operated. So we suspect and we think that cities like Mississauga and others are going to have a limit on the license. And what I mean by that is they will say, companies like ours are only going to be able to operate from, say, May to November of each year. But what's interesting is in Edmonton, the license stipulates that they can operate 12 months a year. Montreal is 9 months. Montreal is also about 8 months as well. So yes, this will be seasonal.
So Mohammed Yamin has a question. Yamin?
Yeah.
Yes, a great presentation.
Thank you,
just a
Mohammed.
question. So, when we talk about the ride-sharing bikes, it's a bike, right? But this is a Scooty, I can just lift it and take it with me. How will you prevent that?
Great question. So, are you looking at my image right now? The front, the screen?
Yeah, yeah.
You see this black jelly bean here in the front, right on the stem of the scooter?
Yes, I do.
That is a GPS unit. So regardless of where this goes, we will know where it is. And if you do take it, good luck because you can't drive it. You can't ride it. I can lock the scooter.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Zia Babar has a question. Zia, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, sorry about that. So yeah,
That's
this is a
okay.
fabulous presentation. I really
Thank
like
you.
it. Thanks for sharing this idea
Thank
with
you.
us. I have seen instances
Yeah.
of this. I mentioned in the chat that we had earlier on the group that I was in Paris a few months back, and they were all over the place. You know, you could
Yeah.
not walk a block without seeing one of these stations, and you had scooties over there.
Yeah. It's a
And
mess.
yeah, Amir mentioned that yes, they were actually fairly successful, and one of the success was causing concerns that
Yeah.
this is a pay-per-use model where someone uses it or subscribes to the service, and they can use a number of minutes.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned that you don't want this to be used for long distances.
Yeah.
So this primarily indicates that you'd be looking at it from in a very dense urban environment, not even a suburban environment, because anyone who wants to go more than a few blocks means they'll be using it for 10 minutes or so, and that makes it impractical to just get 60 minutes a month. Is that right?
Yeah. So can I give you some visual examples?
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. So highly dense areas is where this works quite well. But in the suburbs, this is where for opportunities to work. So are you guys, I don't know how many of you guys live in Mississauga or have been to Mississauga, but the downtown suburb of Square One, the downtown area of Square One near City Hall, that's one area we're looking at as an example. We're also looking at your 5 to 10 minute radius from major GO stations. So Cooksville, Exhibition GO station, Clarkson GO station, Oakville GO station, Hamilton GO station, those type of areas we're also looking at. So I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this terminology called geofencing. What the geofencing does is our software, we can create an artificial radius where the scooter will only be allowed to operate in that radius. Should the scooter go outside that radius, the scooter comes to a halt. And the best example I can give you what that looks like or feels like is try taking a shopping cart out of a Loblaws or a No Frills parking lot. What happens? The cart comes to a stop. It seizes. It will not move. It's the same with these e-scooters. So we want to replace your short rides to your GO stations or your schools or even highly dense areas with an e-scooter instead of a car.
Khurram Khan has a question.
Sorry, can I ask another question?
Yes, please.
Before we move? Yeah. The second thing, you mentioned that you're working closely with the city. So one is for obviously your benefit to introduce a service to a city, to the city of Toronto, to the city of Mississauga. But would there be a reciprocal benefit as well? Because the city would want to know how to do urban planning as well. So is there some bi-directional benefit that you see between you and municipalities?
1,000%. So the reason why we started engaging them in the conversation very early on is to see how we can collaborate with them in including e-scooters as part of the mobility mix for each of the cities. So as an example, in any development or any project that cities approve or do, they always ask for how many bike lanes are going to be made here, or how do people get around instead of cars? What kind of transit options are available to move people in and out. And I'm just going to show you on my last slide here. I think my screen has frozen. Oh, here we go. So we had made a very conscious decision early on to include these guys on the team. So Shoaib Ahmed here is a planner and a policy expert. Dr. Bilal Farouk is already being consulted by major developers who I cannot name because of NDA reasons on how they're going to be providing mobility mixes to their residences in collaboration with various cities. And when I'm talking about major developers, I'm talking about 30,000 units, 40,000 units, those kind of developers. And Adam Jim Brown, the reason why we brought him on board is because as president and chair of the TTC, he had to work closely with all levels of government, including planners, in determining how and when and where transit services would need to be provided and work in sync with current infrastructure. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. So we'll take the next question for Khurram.
Yeah, so my question is, you mentioned that you have driven these things, so you must have a prototype already.
Yeah.
So that prototype is basically your full functional prototype, I'm guessing, right?
This is the one. That's the real scooter.
That's the real
That
scooter.
is the real
The
scooter.
second question is that when you're so you will be renting them out, I guess, right? So would you take ownership of everything, or you like it will be partnership with the cities where they can own the scooters and you will just provide the operating services?
I'm glad you brought that up, and let me just flip to our model here. So in this model, this is where what you mentioned, where you're talking about is a commuter program, and this is where the city would own the fleet, and we would help manage the fleet. So City of Toronto is doing that, and they call it the Toronto Bike Share Program. And interestingly enough, the Toronto Bike Share Program is owned by Toronto Park Authority, who owns Green P. So the City of Toronto has an agreement with them. And we would create a similar agreement with various cities, should they be interested in that type of space. Yeah. Now, it is a very significant capital expense, so I'm not sure if cities would be, favorable to that, specifically thinking of post-COVID efforts to see how much cities would want to invest in a project like this. The easiest thing for the city to do is to delegate the risk to someone like us, and we would own the fleet ourselves and manage it.
Yeah, thank you. Mohammed Yamin has a question.
Yes, so you mentioned geofencing, and
Yeah.
I thought that was very interesting. And would you consider your company to be a hardware or a software firm?
A little bit of both. So the hardware that you see, we do not develop that hardware. We have a supplier that is developing the hardware for us. And they are a very reputable and a very mature hardware developer. They have the expertise. We are just a facilitator and connector. I would say phase 2 or phase 3, more so phase 3 of our company's growth, we would develop our own hardware. In terms of the software is readily available. It is packaged. We are tweaking that software for Canadian standards. Again, we would have our own development team up and running, possibly by phase 2 of our company.
Thank you. Rana Rauf?
Yeah, thank you. Great presentation, Shoaib, by the way. A very good work you're doing. A couple of questions. Given that this is for very short distances, how do you see, like, when people are becoming health conscious? When I'm walking, I have to go a couple of blocks. I have preferred in the past. I've seen these scooties in New York, in Charlotte, in a couple of other places. And for some reason or the other, maybe because I am trying to get fit, I have avoided them. Like, I have seen people riding beside me, and I've seen them available, but I haven't somehow tried these. these scooties. So how do you see that in future, the growth of this, when people are becoming very health conscious? People want to have have trackers who are counting the steps and everything, and calorie burn down and stuff like that.
Great question. So I'm gonna answer in a different way. You ride this scooter, you're gonna get a great breath of oxygen that you're gonna have access to more of when there's less cars on the road. And naturally, people are going to be, if people ride this, there's going to be less cars on the road. I have no reason to take a car with me if I have the ability to ride an e-scooter. In terms of fitness, you're absolutely right. I think this is not a an e-bike, or not an e-bike. It's not an e-bike. It's not a Platon or one of those type of fitness tracker. This is just the ability to get from point A to point B in a safe, quick, and efficient manner. And we can say the same about public transit. We can say the same about many things. I mean, I think in downtown Toronto, or even highly dense areas, it's very difficult to take public transit or Uber or Lyft because there's always so much congestion. So I don't think this is a replacement for fitness. I think this is a replacement for how do I get from point A to point B in a quick and easy manner.
Got it. So just follow up on that.
Yeah.
So regarding the safety, how does insurance cover this? Like, what happens if anything happens with this scooty? Somebody
Great question.
Something or something.
Excellent question. So here's what other cities are asking for scooter companies to have in terms of insurance. Calgary wants $10 million of general liability insurance. Montreal wants $5 million general liability insurance. Kelowna wants $1 million general liability insurance. Each city is different, and they're going to ask us for have insurance. So we don't know what Toronto or Mississauga or other cities are going to ask us. We're also working with some insurance companies to create a pay-per-use insurance. So the general liability insurance covers the rider, and if something happens, somebody gets hurt, it covers any damages to property and the individual. But what we're also working on with some insurance companies is create a model where they pay for the insurance, the user pays for the insurance for the amount of time they're riding the e-scooter, just as you're renting a car.
Right. So my insurance would not cover, like the insurance which I have. That would be great.
Not yet.
Okay. Thank you so much, Shoaib. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you, Rana. Thank you.
Amir, your question?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Hi, Amir. Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually have a couple of questions. So you can, I'll just tell them all four of them to you, and then you can choose whichever you want to answer or not. So first question was that have you raised any funding yet? And the second one.
Just on that note, we talked about the fact that there will be no financial questions and financial.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So second one is that so when you talk about geofencing, how does a rider know while he's riding it or pre-riding that where the geofence ends? I mean, I don't want to be stranded right while I'm driving that where the whole thing gets stuck and then I don't know what to do next.
Yeah.
And the second one is how many rides on. Okay, so there are no financial questions. So in Barclays in UK has actually sponsored bicycles program. I don't know if you know, but are you thinking of getting any of doing anything like that? That maybe get sponsors who could actually do the branding or anything on the scooty, so that the cost can actually be financially made more viable for you guys.
Is that all?
Yeah, I mean the rest of the two they've been taken off.
Ask the question anyway.
So one was that have you raised any funding, and the other one was that how many rides on what number of scooters do you think that you would be actually doing a break even or start making profits or something?
Okay, great. I'll answer all of them. I'll make it very brief in terms of the funding or the money conversation. Is that okay, Saad? I won't get into it.
That's fine. That's with you.
I'll just get it. I'll make it very brief. In terms of funding, yes, I raised some money from family and friends. In terms of your second question on geofencing, how would I know where to go. When you, so we're creating an app, you will see the app very soon. The app will tell you, the app will have a bit of a map to show you where you are allowed and not allowed to go. So you'll be able to see it. Go on, Amir.
I would think that that'll be very difficult to gauge looking at the map. I mean, I can get an idea, but it would still be not that. I mean, I would probably not get the real idea of where I can actually go looking at the map on the mobile screen.
We'll try to make it as specific as possible.
Okay.
So as an example, Amir, say I'm only allowed to go up to Young and Dundas. I'm on Young Street. I'm only allowed to go on Young and Dundas. I cannot go past Dundas on Young Street.
Okay.
So the scooter will automatically come to a very, very close speed limit of about maybe 2 or 3 kilometers. And then you'll get a notification on the app saying you are outside the geofence zone. Please go back. This is where we will have to work out in our models saying, do we continue charging this person because they're outside the geofence, or do we give them a grace period of 15 minutes as an example, where they go find their designated spot and they drop off their scooter.
Okay.
This model is actually validated, Amir. So Toronto Bike Share does this. If you are going to drop off your bike in a particular zone and there's no more bike inserts available, you get a grace period of another 15 minutes to go to the nearest bike drop-off zone and drop off your Toronto Bike Share bike.
Okay.
In terms of the third question, we have currently budgeted for about 300 scooters for deployment. It's a very, very small deployment that we're currently working on. You know, I can get into the break-even analysis and others at a later
That's
stage.
Fine.
I have actually a full breakdown of a presentation on numbers, which I can show offline.
Okay.
What was your fourth question?
Yeah, that was just a suggestion that Barclays has actually done a
yes,
sponsored in UK. So I don't know if that makes sense or something.
My dream is to make this free. And what do I mean by that? So let me give you an example. I believe almost everybody over here, including our friend Sara, has used Toronto Pearson Airport. One of the great things about Toronto Pearson Airport is you get a luggage cart for free.
Of recent, I think. It used to be charged earlier, I guess.
It is now free because it is sponsored by CIBC.
Yeah.
And their thinking is traveling is a very stressful part of your journey. Let's make it a little bit easier by providing cards for free. So CIBC pays for those cards. And my dream and my intention is once this thing launches, I'm going to have conversations with these big banks and big potential supporters to make these rides free. Imagine the kind of brand loyalty these guys can build if they're able to provide a great release, a burden, or take away a burden of your daily, of something that you do daily, twice or 3 times a day, which is going from point A to point B to your place of business or leisure.
Yeah, so we'll move to the next, Sara.
Hi, Shoaib.
Hi, Sara.
Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
A lot of people ask the same questions that I wanted to, but I want to ask you in terms of differentiating yourself from the competition. So I heard you say that you're not making your own scooters. So what is it that differentiates you from the competition, and how do you not allow anyone else to come in?
Great. So I'm going to assume everybody over here is going to give me an signed NDA. Fair?
I think you should have asked that before the meeting.
I'm going to trust Saad and his group that this is a virtual, gentleman's agreement and lady agreement, Sara, or anybody else here. So one of the things we have initiated, the first meeting that we had was with Metrolinx, who is the owner of Go Transit. And we went to them saying we want to partner up with Go Transit to provide these e-scooters as a alternative for first and last mile travel.
True. If you are able to do that, that's amazing. But I'm thinking in terms of your competition. So basically, are you signing exclusively with them, or are they allowed to replicate the same with anyone else? Yes, you'll be the first mover. But then what if someone else just jumps in a year later?
I can't guarantee that, to be honest. Uber currently has a relationship with Metrolinx, where they have their own stop, I guess, designated zone at Exhibition Go Station in downtown Toronto. If they wanted to do fair integration, they could have had that conversation with them a long time ago, but they have not done it.
Question, if we may, from Khurram. Khurram, you
I just
wanted
have
to
a couple of comments there. One was related to the walking part there.
Yeah.
Again, I think I have seen prototypes on videos where there are scooties where you actually drive by walking on them. Like they have some kind of treadmill on there. So that saves on the battery and gives options to people who can actually prefer to actually walk as well. The other part regarding the Barclays thing is that I was thinking that something similar, like for if you can pay with like RBC rewards or something, it will make a business decision for such a sponsor as well, right? Like if you can work with them to see if, because they have these big liabilities on their books in terms of rewards points and stuff like that. So if this is one of the redeemable things which people can do, it can create loyalty for them as well and get off the liability of their books as well by continuously using it rather than people just collecting it.
That is a great suggestion, Khurram. I would like to, and if somebody over here has knowledge, I'd like to understand how the economics on rewards work, how the conversion on rewards work. Initially, on one of the things we were thinking of, and we're still probably going to integrate this, is to have Scooty rewards. So for every kilometers you drive, you score a point that you can redeem. For, you know, additional minutes per se, or transfer those rewards to gift cards or donate them to different charities. So if somebody has knowledge in that space, I would love some guidance and advice. Thank you, Khurram. That was excellent.
Yeah, with that being said, I think we are at the 4 o'clock mark. We've gone a little bit overrun. Rauf, maybe we just one last quick comment.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I just wanted to say, so what is the estimated income from a user, like just a rough idea?
It all depends on, Rana, I'm happy to take that offline with Amir and others if you guys want to have numbers conversation. So there's multiple factors. Factor number one is, what is the insurance cost going to be for me as a consumer, for me as a business? Factor number two, what is the licensing fees going to be? Factor number three, what other charges am I going to be looking at from a business standpoint that the city is going to ask me to incur? So there's a few factors. And I have some numbers that I can share with you. We have a unit economics document that we can share, that I can discuss with you in further.
Sure.
But there's multiple. It's not as clear cut as X number of scooters equals X number of revenue equals Y number of revenue. There's multiple factors that go into play.
Right.
I'm happy to walk you through that.
So let's do it this way. Let's do it this way. I think there is a certain amount of interest to take it to the next level, and some people might be more interested in the numbers, and I think that's a conversation where it can be a more focused one. So let's work offline on the GTA entrepreneurs group, and then a selected group of folks, whoever feel want to have a deeper dive discussion, let's do it. Take it there. For the purposes of this discussion today, I think it was a very good oversight as to the Scooty business that is about to be launched. So I appreciate you taking the time out, Shoaib, and we hope you the best of luck. And thank you so much, folks, for joining the call. So,
thank you.
Thank you.